I don't. Hi, guys. Welcome. Whew, that's really loud. Okay. I'll introduce myself real quick. My name is Emily Worrell. I teach first grade here at Wawasee. I've been asked by Dr. Troyer to kind of help with some of the communications in his transition into superintendency. And our meeting tonight is one of the products of that. So we have a few meetings scheduled throughout the community over the next month where we'll be getting some feedback from our community members. And tonight, I'm going to do a quick introduction of Dr. Troyer and let him talk about himself a little bit first. Before we get started, out of respect for everybody that's here, we really want everyone to have an opportunity to have their thoughts heard tonight. So there are mics available for you to do that. If there are specific questions that you want answered from Dr. Troyer, he does provide his contact information on the handout sheet that you can get in touch with him with throughout the week at the school if something doesn't get handled or answered the way you want it tonight. So tonight with us, we also have some members of our board. We have Don Bocart, our board president, and Rob Fisher, who is one of our board members. So they're also here if you need some help with that. And tonight, our guest speaker, or our main guy, is Dr. Steve Troyer, our new superintendent at Wawasee.
Hey, thank you, Emily.
Yep.
We are live streaming on YouTube tonight, so they tell me that I have to present from up here first. I'll go through my presentation up here, and then I'll probably move down where I'm a lot more comfortable, down on the floor after I'm done with the presentation. I'm also going to take off my mask, which hopefully will help things be a little more comfortable. And we'll get started. So a little bit about myself. One, before I get into that, I appreciate you being here. We're never certain how well these types of events are going to be attended. And one of the things that I've set out as a priority for me is as we get started in this work in a new role, I really want to embrace our community and make sure that we are giving you an opportunity to be heard on issues that are important to you. So we've got 4 questions that we'll circle around to at the end of the presentation tonight to really get your feedback. But to start that conversation, there's some information that I want to present and get started with. So a little bit about me. Prior to moving into the role of superintendent, I was the principal. I was assistant superintendent here at Wawasee for the last 6 months. And before that, I was the principal at Milford School for 2 years. Before that, I was an assistant principal at a high school for 7 years and taught Project Lead the Way prior to that for 7 years at the high school level at a couple different schools. And this is a picture of my family. We have 2 girls, my wife Brittany, and our daughters Caitlin and Harley, and they are 9 and 3. So that's a little bit about us and some of my experiences. So I want to, before we really get into some of my goals and priorities, I want to talk a little bit about what are my values. I think that's really important as we start with new leadership and moving forward with this transition, that people understand where I stand on issues. So number 1, all can grow. I really feel strongly about this. If you're familiar at all with Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset, this is a big passion of mine. I think strongly that people can grow, and that not only applies to our kids, but also to our staff and our parents and families. It's really important that we in school are constantly trying to help people grow academically, socially, emotionally, etc. Integrity is very important to me. This has to be at the foundation of any strong leader, and being able to trust that the things that are happening in any role in leadership is really important. So integrity is at my core. Taking care of people. We are in a people business. in schools. Not only are we working with kids every day, but we're also one of the biggest employers in this area. I think we're actually the second biggest employer behind Pollywood. And because of that, we have a lot of people that we interact with and that we are charged with taking care of. We've got just under 3,000 kids. We've got around 400 staff members at Wawasee, and that's a lot of people that we need to take care of, that we make sure that their needs are being met, and that's really important to me. A focus on success. I really feel strongly that that as I begin in this journey, that defining success is going to be critical for our growth and for ultimately what we want to achieve, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes. But we define success differently for each person, for each staff member, really for each school building, to be honest. So having those conversations together where we talk about what does success mean for that particular child, for a particular teacher, for a particular grade level or school building, and then circling back around and celebrating those successes is really, really important. Finally, communication is key. One of the things that I've tried to do from the beginning of my transition into this new role is to communicate well and communicate often. And I want people to feel like we're being transparent and that they know what is happening as we work through decisions that need to be made and ultimately set a direction for us. So those are some values that I have. Certainly there's other ones, but those are some of the most important ones. And those help to form priorities which shape my leadership as a superintendent. So first and foremost, I am an instructional leader. There's a phrase in school leadership called instructional leadership, and that's basically taking ownership of the way that we teach kids. So not only what is being taught, but how do we teach it? And that's probably, if I self-evaluate, something that I'm most comfortable with from a leadership perspective. So that will be critical for me in my role as a superintendent, which I'm really excited about and passionate about. The second priority for me is building and managing relationships. And that occurs not only in our schools, but also outside our schools and with our community. That's something that I feel strongly is critical to our success. One of the things that I've discovered, even more so than what I thought before I started this position, was how important those relationships are within our community and with our community people. It just couldn't be more critical to the success of our school. And we benefit when we have strong relationships with our community, and our community benefits when they have strong relationships with us. So maintaining these relationships is a huge priority for me. Finally, I want to make sure that we are doing strong strategic planning. I don't think that that's something that's necessarily been a big priority for us at Wawasee, certainly not in the last few years since I've been here. And part of the work that we're doing now is going to be identifying the themes and the things that we're doing well and the things that we need to improve in, and then using that information to help set forth a new strategic plan that really kicks off here probably this summer and goes into next year and probably for the next 5 years, setting that course for us as an organization. So bringing in this element of strong strategic planning is very important to me. And those three things serve as three of the priorities as I get started in this new role and start moving things forward. My vision for Wawasee, and I've said this over and over and over again, is to become a premier school corporation in Northern Indiana. This is really important as we start to identify what are the great schools in this area of the state. And how do we become a part of that conversation? That's really my vision. Now, how are we going to get there? I think that we need to focus on being an instructionally focused professional learning community, which I'll talk about here in just a second, through a renewed emphasis on accountability, growth, and improvement. when we talk about a professional learning community, we are a little over a year and a half or so into a project where we are shifting our thinking and how we go about doing our business into this frame of what we call professional learning communities. And this is where we work together differently, and we become very collaborative in the work that we do, and we start to provide unity between our buildings and in and among our corporation itself as we take a very professional approach to learning and to instruction. You will hear oftentimes that teachers are professionals, and I want to take a very professional approach as we look at learning and how we improve learning here at Wawasee. So that would be vision. I really want to be a premier school corporation in this area of the state. We have everything that we need to do that in place. I just think we need to focus how we go about doing that work, and I think that over the next couple of years, you will see that vision come to fruition. Some goals that I have, these are really focusing on the first 6 months of my work and transition into superintendent. So first and foremost, listening and learning. Over the last 4 weeks, and before that, I have been spending so much time just hearing input from all of our stakeholders. I've talked to probably about half of our teachers in small group meetings so far. I've got meetings scheduled with our parent groups. I've certainly spent some time in the community talking with some community folks, connecting with our chamber, connecting with some of the business operations in the area, and also our non-for-profits, our faith-based organizations. Those kinds of meetings are really important, and throughout that process, I'm asking questions and I'm really trying to hear response back. And so that's a critical piece. The second thing is strengthening our board relations. We've got 2 of our board members here, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. We are working diligently on establishing a very strong superintendent board relationship. Some of the things that we hear about that relationship are that a strong, highly functioning team of board and superintendent is one of the most impactful, positive things that can come to a school corporation. So we're spending a lot of time making sure that we have that strong relationship and that we're working together as a team. The third goal for me is engaging in the Wawasee community. This and point number 1 are obviously really important. I think establishing that relationship in and among the community is critical. Starting to build those ties as I get started in my work, and the community also trying to involve me in some of the things that they're working on, I think are really important. I sat down a couple weeks ago with the Chamber of Commerce, and they're getting ready to work on I can't remember the name, but it's basically and they want the schools to be a part of that conversation for what's happening in our town and what's happening in the county as well. And so we want to continue to be a good part of our community. The final goal for me is to establish a systematic process of communication to make sure that there are channels for two-way communication to happen. One of the things that we really want to beef up over the next 6 months is how we are getting information to our community and to our families, making sure that they have the things that they need to understand what is happening in decision making, and also providing that layer of transparency that's really important as taxpayers looking at a publicly funded organization such as a school. Those processes of communication are probably never more important than they are right now for us. So that would certainly be a big goal of mine. Our greatest strength comes in the form of our 5 schools. We've got 5 schools here that make up Wawasee Community School Corporation, and the kids and the families and the teachers that are a part of these school communities are what makes Wawasee absolutely outstanding. We have to capitalize on those resources if we're going to continue to move forward and to grow. And I really think that we've got things in place in and among our 5 schools that will help us to move to the next level, move towards that vision, as I said, of being a premier school corporation. These 5 schools and our staff that we have in them, as I've really got to learn more about each of those individual staffs and get to know the people that are in them, they are really, really outstanding and of high quality. And I appreciate that we've got those things in place in our buildings. One of our biggest challenges, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on challenges, but I just want to let you know that this is a big issue for us, is our enrollment. And we, as you can see, starting in 2015 through the current 2020 school year, we have had declining enrollment each year. And this year in particular has been a big challenge as we've dealt with the effects of COVID and the ongoing pandemic. But it's not just this year. For us, this has been an ongoing thing. And as we look at projections that are based upon our live births happening in our school boundary, then that enrollment issue continues to drop to the point where in 2026, they're estimating, they being Forecast 5, which is a company that we work with, they do a lot of projections for the state of Indiana for schools. They're projecting that we're down to 2,500 kids. And in 2015, not that long ago, we were 3145 was our ADM. And so this presents a real challenge for us, and a challenge that we're going to have to address head on here in the coming years as we determine how are we going to look as a school corporation in the next 5 years or so. 2026 is really not that far away for us. And I will tell you that this trend certainly has me worried as we think about school finance, as we think about the way that we are funded as a school corporation. That's worrisome, and we're going to have to figure that out. So that from my perspective is one of our greatest challenges that is ahead for us, and something that we'll be spending some time taking a look at in the coming months and certainly the coming years. So that gets me to our 4 questions, and really tonight is about getting some feedback from you. I think Emily said earlier that if you've got specific questions that are related to your specific situation, I would encourage you to reach out to me individually, and I will set up a phone conversation or a meeting for you to come in. But tonight is more about getting feedback from you rather than me answering specific questions, which I don't mind doing whatsoever. But we want to get feedback, and I would prefer, I've talked enough, I would prefer to not do all the talking and do a lot more of the listening. So with that in mind, these are the 4 questions. By the way, these are the 4 questions that I've been asking everybody. So as we've sat down with teachers over the last month or so, they've all got the same 4 questions. When we sit down with parent groups, they'll get the same 4 questions. And those questions are, what should I know about the Wawasee community? What should I know about your school or situation? What is working well and should be sustained? And what needs attention and could be reevaluated? So those are the 4 questions that we're trying to gather some information on, again, so that as we look at strategic planning, that we can take that feedback and that information and really look towards the future as we begin to craft what that plan is. So I think what we're going to do is we'll open it up. The 3 mics are available, and you can come forward and just introduce yourself. I would appreciate that. Tell me what your connection is to the school, if you have one. Maybe you don't have one. And you can give me some feedback on any or all of the questions. We don't want to limit your time and feedback, but to be respectful for people's time, maybe limit it to a few minutes if you have that, and then if you want to continue with something, certainly I would welcome a meeting with you or a conversation. Any questions before we open that up? All right, yes, sir. Yeah, please. Mr. Van Loo, can I come down off the stage now? Perfect, thank you.
My name is Ben Wilson. I have a ninth grader here at the Wawasee High School who's in the SE department, and a seventh grader and a second grader at Milford School.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you would clarify what the professional learning community idea means, what kind of changes that means. In other words, what would be different, or what is different when everyone in the faculty and staff are thinking in terms of being a professional learning community?
Yeah, so a professional learning community really is looking at school from a team approach. So quite often at elementary grade levels, then that would be a grade level team working together. At our secondary levels, sometimes that's at middle school, for example, sometimes that's grade level teams, and sometimes it's departmentalized teams. But really working together, collaborating together to identify what are the priorities of learning, and how do we know when kids learn it or don't know it, and then based on that, how do we respond? Is really the very, very large picture view of what a professional learning community is. And I would say that it brings unity and togetherness in terms of what's being taught, how it's being taught, and how we're assessing that information to determine if students learned it or not. And then the final piece is responding to that learning. If they didn't learn it, then we need to go back and we need to do something different. If they did learn it, then maybe we need to provide enrichment for those kids that did. So that's a very short answer to professional learning communities.
As a follow-up, is that set in contrast to, nationally or even state standardized testing in which everybody just either passes or fails, and the pressure is on the teacher to just get the kids to pass the standardized test? Is that what you're saying, that you can make more of a local determination of how the actual kids are?
I wouldn't say that it's in contrast to requirements by the state.
Right.
It actually, I think, helps us to provide clarity on what our goals are with relationship to what the state is asking us to teach as a priority, if that makes sense. So I think it's not professional learning communities or do what the state tells you to. It's professional learning communities help us to achieve what the state identifies as important through their identified standards and things that they're asking us to teach, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll just comment, and I'm new. We've just been in this school for about a year.
Sure.
So I have nothing but positive feedback on just the experiences we've had with the teachers, the special education, and the timing of this meeting. I mean, just heard on the news today in Chicago, the teachers won't come back to school, the unions and all of that, and I'm sure there's reasons, but it's just, I'm grateful to live in a community where those that have the resources and the power are looking out for those that are dependent on them. That's I think a indication of a good society, and just the way even the school opening its doors at the risks of all the risks involved, and bringing the kids in when other schools have stayed closed, keeping sports going. I think that shows to me that all of the adults are thinking about what's best for the kids, and I really appreciate that. That's encouraging.
Sure. We would, I think, also from the school perspective, offer the same sentiment that we feel blessed to be a part of a community that embraces the work that we're doing, and is wanting us to respond the way that we've responded. I think I see Mr. Spiker, he's the principal at Syracuse Elementary, shaking his head. We just had this conversation the other day, actually. I feel like our community has been very supportive and wanting us to remain open, and we've done everything that we can to try and accommodate that. So, thank you. Come on up, sir. I'm going to shift this way, trying to keep our social distancing.
Hi there. I'm John Hunziker. I have a junior and an 8th grader. 2 quick questions. When you talk about a strategic plan, that's going to take more than a couple months to form if you're going to start in the summer. What are some things that you're going to do immediately starting next year that we're going to see a change in the classroom as far as maybe in some core subjects? And then also, what have you done or will you do to see why these families are either choosing to go to other districts that currently live in our district, or why are you coming to our district if you live in other districts? Are you interviewing those families and finding those answers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll start with that piece first. We have, I'm going to say approximately 250 students that live in our boundary and go elsewhere to other public schools, and we've got approximately 150 that come our direction. So we're approximately, the actual number is negative 94, and I can't remember what the specifics are on the others. Some of those families we know, and yes, to answer that question, they're absolutely on our radar in terms of we need to talk to them and figure out why. Some of them, it may be that they're leaving for a practical nature. Maybe they live in a community, they work in a community, daycare is in that community, and it just makes sense for them to go to a different school, and we understand that. But there may be others that are dissatisfied with something, and we want to find out why and begin to address that. So I will tell you that for me is a big priority and something that I want to get started on right away as we, going back to your other question about what's coming up in the next couple months, that for me is a big priority. We have a certain number of students that we do know who they are because they were enrolled with us at one point and they made the decision to unenroll and go somewhere else. Those kids we know about. The kids who we don't know about are the kids that have never set foot in one of our schools, and they have chosen to go somewhere else. That particular data is not available to us because we could have someone that was across the street, for example, and if they've never been in a Wawasee school, we have no record of them. Now, their data exists with the state, but the state has not been willing to give us that information. And we could go to the neighboring schools and say, okay, can you give us a list of all our kids that go to your place? And maybe they would and maybe they wouldn't. They probably wouldn't, because I don't know that I would want to give them their list of kids either. Maybe I should. But that's why we would maybe not know about a particular family that lives in our boundary but goes somewhere else. Regarding what is important in the next few months in the classroom, and I would also, I'm looking at Mr. Spiker again. One of the things that we've really had a challenge in dealing with over the last 9 months is how we're responding to COVID and the additional pressures and burdens that it's put on all of our staff, not just our teaching staff, but in reality, all of our staff in school. And so we've had to balance, for this year especially, how do we balance the needs of our people, students and staff alike, with really moving forward on a aggressive plan to get better academically, with also supporting their social and emotional needs. And so that's been a tough situation for us, to be honest. All I can tell you is that we are planning to really re-engage and reignite that fire. I talked about this professional learning community project. I think that has a direct impact on what's happening academically in classrooms. And I would think that over the coming months and certainly into next school year, that you will see the benefit of that work with increased levels of academic performance. And I think for me, and I sat down with a consultant that we work with the other day on Friday afternoon, and I told them that I think the path for us to getting better is to really engage and become high-functioning professional learning communities. I strongly believe that that's our path to get better. So I don't know if that answered your question, Mr. Hunsaker, but those are a couple thoughts I have on it. Yep. Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi
My name is Jeff Boyer,
Uh-huh.
and my wife Jody and I have had, well, I'm an alumni.
Uh-huh.
I won't say what year, a few years back. I have 2 boys that have graduated, and I have a sophomore right now.
Sure.
First off, I want to thank you. I've read what you put out. I'm excited about your points. I want to address one, because to me, my question and thought comes from a more 3,000-foot cultural and climate, I guess, question. I love what you said. Great relationships are grounded in effective communication that's timely, accurate, honest, candid, and two-way. Being here for 16 years, I feel like that's lacked greatly at Wawasee, so I appreciate that. And I don't know if you want to comment about this or this will be one of the one-on-ones, but there's a lot of things that have been out there. I think with the whole tax referendum, I think that could have went better if this would have been in place. I think that maybe you might agree with that. But in particular, one of the questions I have that does overall a lot of us is, can you update us on the position of the athletic director? Like, what's going on there? Because nobody that I've talked to can give us a good answer. It's just like I guess my question is, it feels like it's being shoved under the rug all the time. And I know in your leadership position and some of the others, they can't always give an answer to everything because of legality and all that. But I think sometimes Wawasee, we don't do a good job of addressing the elephants in the room.
Yep.
And at least try to fill in as many blanks as we can, even though we can't fill them in. So maybe you can at least say, we hear you.
Sure. So number one, we do hear you.
Okay.
Number two, I can't go into details on that.
I expected that.
I
but-
think there will be some clarity on that at some point. I will tell you that we acknowledge that people want to know what's going on, and we aren't allowed to go into details at this time. But I think that it's very important to me to provide some closure to that situation at some point when we're able to.
And is there a step moving forward? I guess my question is, because I've asked a few different people, some in the community and some obviously in leadership, but I sense it's like, when you ask it, it's like a deer in head, like, we don't know. And maybe it's truly they don't know, or is there, I'm not looking for a company line because we want to be authentic and real, right?
Sure.
Yet at the same time to say, I don't want to go into details because I only know what I've heard, and I don't know if that's even accurate. But
Sure. Like I said, I
make
totally get
sense?
the question.
Okay.
I think we will do our best to provide some clarity on that when we're able to.
Sure.
And I look forward to being able to do that.
Yep, thanks.
So, yep. Anything else? Come on down.
I'm Clay Brooks. My wife and Mindy and I have, we brought 2 boys up through the Milford School System, both in high school now. Hey, the core values, I love it. I think that's something that's important to have. And looking at your 4 questions, I think the one that coming through the Milford system, and I'm sure the other buildings are the same. The sense of safety of sending our kids to the school and knowing that they were in great hands. The staff always looked out for their best needs, and I appreciate that. Knowing that they were safe the entire time, and getting them re-entered back as quickly as the school system did, I appreciate that as well, because however my kids thought it was a great idea to be at home all day, I didn't. So
Sure.
that is great. So what's working well, I think it's your staff. I do. I think you got great staff that cares about their jobs and their careers and these kids. So I appreciate your time, and I like the fact that you're doing this. That means a lot to a lot of us. So thank you.
Yep, thank you. Anybody else? All right. In the education world, we talk about what's the phrase where we wait for somebody to actually come and comment? What's that? Wait time. Yeah, that's right. A teacher will just sit there and stare at you until someone uncomfortably has to make a comment because they're tired of hearing the silence. We won't do that tonight. I really appreciate your feedback, honestly. That's something that's so important to us as we collect information about what is important to our families and to our community. That is something that we have to continuously come back to you to get that input and that feedback on. I just want to let you know 1 or 2 things. We've got 3 more community meetings. Next week, I believe we're at Milford. And same time, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And I think we're going to be in the big gym there. The following Saturday, so the 20th, we're at Wawasee Middle School, I think at 9:30. And so we wanted to do a Saturday morning time frame down there. And then the following Monday, we'll be at North Webster on the 22nd for the last one of those. We are also going to take all this information along with a lot of other data that I've been collecting and feedback through conversations, through different information that's available to us, and I'll be putting together a State of the School report, which I'll do with the board at some point in March, and we'll also try and do that report out to a couple different places so that people can get some follow-up on what we discovered during the listen and learn phase of entry into the superintendent role. So that's coming up. Strategic planning will be coming as we get towards the summer, and that will kind of set our 5-year course. And then I just want to encourage you that if you want to be involved in the business of schools, that you attend our board meetings, that you those are the opportunities for you to have some type of investment into the work that we do. We are also going to be working with our board to try and do some work sessions. In fact, that State of the School report may be done during a work session. So there's business that the board has to do, and then there's kind of direction setting that the board will be a part of as well. And we want that to be done in the public. So that oftentimes doesn't happen during a regular board meeting, and we would have a special meeting of sorts to do that kind of work. And so we'll be looking at some of those things as possibilities in the future. So keep your eye out for that. I gave you our contact information. We're really trying to be cognizant of what we put out proactively on our social media. So I put my superintendent Twitter account. If you're a Twitter person, we just started posting on that. Here, I think there's 2 tweets up right now, but that's something we'll start pushing things out. Our corporation Facebook page is one page that a lot of people go to for information, and so we'll use that. We'll use our website and some of our other channels of communication. Parent Square for us has been a big one that we've brought in the last year or so. So we want to stay in touch with you. We want you to be able to get a hold of us when you need to as well. Okay? Thank you again for coming. I appreciate it. And if you have any individual questions, I will be around for a few minutes.
You mentioned the survey.
Yeah, absolutely. Up on our website, there is a survey. It's right on the main page. Superintendent entry plan is listed on top. It's in a white box, I think. Right below that, it's listen and learn survey.
Listen and learn survey. And that's, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The survey we're using, it has these 4 questions on it. So if you weren't comfortable stepping up to the mic this evening, we still want to hear from you. Also share it with any friends and family in our area that have kids, don't have kids, business owners, landowners. A lot of us have friends that live on the lake but aren't here full time. We want to hear from them. What do they know about our community? What do they think is going well? What do they think needs to be changed? Really direct them to our website and get them to fill out that survey. All of those answers are going to go into the data that we pull and theme for the State of the School address.
All right. Thank you again for being here this evening, and have a great week.